Yo, welcome back to Utility Sports. If you are new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Also, hit the like button if you do enjoy this video. We have a Toronto Raptors offseason preview. Now, this is a really big and critical offseason for the Toronto Raptors to really kind of set up the next couple of years. Reason being, it's kind of a transitional period from the Kyle Lowry era to whatever is next. You have to consider that Pascal Siakam is the go-to guy. Obviously, he's the heartbeat and pulse of this team. Fred VanVleet is another huge impact player for them. So those are the two guys that you really have to build around. So let's kind of look at what do the Toronto Raptors really need to do to get back into contention quickly. There's a couple of things that they have to consider, though. So first off, we will go ahead and take a look at the cap holds. Now, this is really important on retaining and renouncing the rights of some of these guys. So for Kyle Lowry, it's $39.34 million. You're going to want to retain these rights. Ultimately, if he gets traded or he leaves, this is going to really open up the bottom line there, that $23 million of usable cap space. Nagoya is a guy that you are going to want to renounce his rights. Khem Birch is a guy you're going to want to retain the rights on. Stanley Johnson at the 4.95, that is going to be a renounce from me. And then next up is Gary Trent Jr. You are going to want to retain these rights. So that's basically what you have to do on the cap hold sense. But here are the big keys to the offseason. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you retain Gary Trent Jr. He's a key contributor. He's a guy that continues to get better as the longer he's in the league. You want to really make sure that you retain him, get him signed long-term. I think that's absolutely crucial for this team moving forward. And you also want to add talent through the draft. Now, the Toronto Raptors are really, really happy to be sitting at 4 where they're currently at. There's going to be a lot of nice players available to them. They have a lot of flexibility on kind of that top tier talent, which is not something that we were expecting, right? So let's go ahead and talk about, during the season, it was not expected. We thought once again that the Toronto Raptors were going to be a team in contention in the Eastern Conference. I think a lot of people felt that way. Definitely thought that they should be a top 4, top 5 seed for sure in the East. And then it just did not go well this year. A little head scratching considering the talent that they have on this roster, but I think they're ready to kind of reload and get back to the postseason and really make a big run. Obviously, they're picking 4. That definitely helps. You can get a star player at that spot. This is a deep draft. There's a lot to like about what this draft has to offer. So for the Toronto Raptors moving forward, adding talent through the draft, maybe negotiating some trades on trade night or on draft night, and also making sure that you retain Gary Trent Jr. Now, some of the needs here, playmaking guard. Obviously, I think Kyle Lowry is going to be gone. I think that's not really a secret. You also have to add a scoring or shooting wing. And then finally, the last key team need is rim protection. This team is definitely going to add a center or two during the offseason period. I think it makes a lot of sense. Khem Birch is a nice rotational piece, but I think you're going to want to add a little more depth at that big man spot, just considering that that's what the Raptors really need. Some really, really good key rim protection. There's a couple of free agents that kind of fit the bill, kind of fit where the money needs to be for this team. Obviously, I don't think they're going to go and use up all their usable cap space on it, on a big man, but I guess we'll see when the offseason truly comes. So those are the big needs. Those are the highlighted ones. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the free agent targets for them. Richaun Holmes, that's a big one from Sacramento. I think he is probably the best guy to have here for the Toronto Raptors, just considering he can be a big impact player. Holmes is a guy that slides in very nicely for this team. Now, another guy that's a potential option, Jarrett Allen. He's an RFA. It's going to be kind of tough to kind of get what they want money-wise with him. I don't know if that's entirely realistic, but that's an option for sure. It really depends on how everybody's feeling about him. If Cleveland's, willing to, just let him go, if they offer up a big enough contract, that's where the key sits with the Toronto Raptors. Can you get him at the right price? And how far is Cleveland ultimately willing to go to keep Jarrett Allen? I think considering he was a main trade chip, they're going to want to keep him long-term. I think that's, really, really set in stone there. Dwight Howard, another potential free agent option, and JaVale McGee. So you basically have the guy you're going to have to pay the premium on, Jared Allen, another guy you're going to have to pay quite a bit of money in, Richaun Holmes. And then you have two budget options towards the end in guys like Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. There's going to be some other guys that they might look to bring in, some guys that have been around the league quite some time. Obviously, since they want to get back to the postseason, you want to have some guys that have had some playoff experience as well in the mix. So we'll have to kind of monitor that. There's quite a few free agent centers that could be good budget ones for them, but I guess we'll have to see what would they want to go. Now, if this were me personally, I'd really take a good hard look at Richaun Holmes. I think this is probably the best fit of this group, just considering of timeline, where they're at, how much money they have. The Jared Allen thing is going to get really expensive, and I don't know if that's exactly where Toronto wants to go with things. Having that big expensive center, pretty tough for this team right now. Obviously, they got to pay a couple of guys already. That could get a little tricky. Now, here's the key part in all of this. What are they going to do at pick 4, right? You have Jonathan Kuminga as an option, Scottie Barnes, Jalen Suggs. That's the big three to me. Those are the guys that stand out that you really want to consider. So I think the number one target should be Jalen Suggs. Personally, I think he slots in very nicely next to Fred VanVleet. He's a combo guard. He's a guy that can beat you off the dribble. He is phenomenal athletically, great in transition, really good around the rim, can really finish around the rim, and a guy that's a really, really big impact defender. Now, we know Nick Nurse is going to be key in on that. He loves defensive guys. He loves guys that can really guard multiple positions. That's what Jalen Suggs offers. He has pretty good size in that regard of where he can guard a couple of guys. He also has the strength to do so as well. Really good athlete, quick twitch. Also a guy that plays the passing lanes very well. So Jalen Suggs should be priority number one. Otherwise, you can get a guy like Scottie Barnes, really, really high upside. Once again, a really good defender on top of it. Also a playmaker. So those are the two kind of guys that's, really stand out to me. And then if you want a guy that can eventually possibly be a go-to scorer later on in his career, Jonathan Kuminga is an option. Really good size, good length, a guy that can shot create. And I think he'll be able to do so effectively at the next level. I understand some of his numbers weren't where everyone thought they would be, but I don't think it's time to hit the panic button on him moving forward. I think he's a key piece for whatever team he is drafted by. But when we're looking at the Raptors, these are the three options that I think stick out best at pick number 4. Now, here's kind of the tricky part of it. Do you do this, or do you go ahead and move back to 6? That gives you some flexibility to pick up 2 first-round picks and then also a pick in the teens. So I think with that, you still probably have the option to take Scottie Barnes or Kuminga. I think, one of those guys will be there. I don't think Jalen Suggs would be there in that situation. But if you move back to 6, get the 2 second-round picks for depth purposes, also a pick in the teams from the Oklahoma City Thunder. So that kind of really makes it interesting. And if you're the Toronto Raptors, is that what you want to do? Or do you want to just go ahead, take your guy at 4 and feel good about it? Because I think that's, for me, I would just go ahead and take Jalen Suggs, but let's just kind of lay out the facts there. That could be a potential option if you want to regain a few more assets. Obviously, since this is a deeper draft, getting that extra first round pick would be absolutely huge. You can get a really, really big impact bench player for sure. 100%. I would feel pretty good about it if I were them. But for me personally, I really would like to stick there and take Jalen Suggs just because I think his upside is tremendous. Playing alongside of VanVleet, there's a lot to like about this team moving forward. It's very fortunate that they ended up at pick number 4. I think that's the key in all of this. Obviously, if they were picking a little later, like 6 or 7, without, obviously that trade option, it would be just less attractive as a whole. But since they have 4 and they can, maybe squeeze out a couple more assets if they decide to move back to that potential 6, where a lot of people thought they would be pre-lottery, I think that'd be really, really good for them. Overall, my thoughts on them, I think they have still a pretty bright future. Pascal Siakam's not going anywhere. Obviously, VanVleet is a guy in the postseason that is super dangerous, tough shot maker, just wills his team to win. So you have to have some of those guys. And I think adding a guy like Jalen Suggs at that guard spot makes things really, really interesting for them going into next year. I mean, to me, they're a playoff team for sure next year. Pretty much no matter what they do in the offseason, I have a lot of confidence in Nick Nurse and in this front office. So there's a lot to like about this team. I would be pretty optimistic about them heading into the future. I wanted to say thank you again for tuning in. Subscribe if you are new. Also, hit that like button if you did enjoy the video. And also, leave in the comment section below what you think will happen at pick number 4. Who are the free agents that they are going to look to sign? I want to know it from you guys. It's really important to me. So thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you in our next video.